And this is Mike O'Connor, part of the new Voodoo Media Services marketing team. And I'm joined today by Adam, who's from our trading desk. And I think Adam is our most experienced media trader. He's actually an independent media trader who we've been partnering with for about 10 years. Adam, I must say that your career in digital media is rich. And I'd say of anyone that I've bounced off of, I owe my education to the programmatic media buying world, especially to you. You turned me from newbie into a semi-expert in just a little under 6 months, and I owe you a debt of gratitude. Now, of course, we work together on so many different projects that you're constantly filling my mind with improved strategies and approaches. And I know you've been doing this for quite a while yourself.
Yeah, I have since for about 20 years. Started off in SEO, early SEO, and very, very rudimentary paid search back in the day, and have grown along with the paid media industry. Made a switch over to programmatic and exchange traded media about 10 years ago, and have been working deeply in that ever since, onto the connected TV and audio world we have today. And for fun, I like to be an adjunct professor of internet marketing at our local university.
Teaching the new generation to do it right. And I don't think there's anybody more qualified to be the co-host of part 2 of our series of basically adapting as an advertiser to a tracking-free environment. We talked a little bit about this. Apple certainly catalyzed the trend by introducing a new security update a month ago, and we're recording this in early June 2021, that essentially turned mobile device tracking from a largely opt-out premise to very much an opt-in premise. And they really are holding device makers and app builders to that standard. You can't get into the App Store unless you're very transparent with consumers. And it's not just about allowing tracking at the individual app level. It's that blanket opting that used to happen where any other app that the company owned would be granted that permission by extension. Well, not anymore, not without asking the consumer. It's going to be no surprise to you that the opt-out factor is much higher than the opt-in factor. And as a result, we're going to be facing a world with fewer mobile devices that we can track at an individual level. And I would say we couple that, Adam, with the fact that browser cookies, which is that little bit of code on your Chrome browser or your Safari browser that gives marketers the ability to track individually what sites you're visiting, what actions you take on the site, whether you wind up as a paid customer or whether you bounce away. All of that, through whether it's through regulation or self-policing, it's all in effect going away. And that poses a bit of a challenge to the industry as a whole. And Adam, maybe you could talk a little bit about some of the immediate real-time ramifications of this trend here in 2021.
Yeah, you bet. Just being able to message the users that have visited your site, again, via retargeting, is going to be a challenge, because of its reliance on cookies. Things like to understand how many times a user has seen an ad for frequency capping as well. We don't want to bombard users with frequencies and create a negative brand association. Understanding if a user took a particular action after just seeing an ad can become a challenge. And then understanding how much the cost per action, the CPA from those conversions, you're doing a calculation based on those actions. And then lastly, the big one is understanding the behaviors of that particular device and user. Again, that was very much cookie based. And with the cookie kind of being exited, there's challenges around understanding what that user does online to anticipate their needs and therefore the ads that they'll be seeing.
So as an individual consumer, I'm kind of happy that the next time I shop for a car, and start checking out prices online, that I'm not going to be stalked by every dealership chasing me around the internet, no matter where I go. That's a bit of a relief. But as a marketer, listen, we've all relied on that funnel strategy where we begin with trust and then we move to brand consideration and eventually purchases or don't purchases. And the advertising messaging that goes along with the funnel has proven to be very effective. But with that sunsetting, and there's also one other tactic that we should chat about, which is actually a bit of good news. Adam, first, maybe explain the difference between geofencing and geoconquesting, how both rely on mobile device ID, but how potentially less impacted by this new trend that particular capability will be.
Absolutely. So geofencing is setting up a radius or some sort of polygon around an area of interest. A lot of B2B, conferences,
Yep.
Schools, shopping malls, things like that. There's some sort of area of interest. And geofencing is targeting users real time that are within that fence.
Right.
Geoconquesting is still using those same fences or those radiuses or polygons, but that is using some sort of either targeted look back window, either a general 1 week, 1 month, 6 month window, or if you're looking at specific dates, you can do that as well. So that's geoconquesting.
And it might surprise people to know that your device is automated wherever it goes. If you've got tracking turned on, there's somebody keeping track of you up to, up to a year in retrospect now, and maybe some even longer than that.
Yeah. Your data is definitely being stored. Usually it's provided by location enabled apps, not necessarily the system itself, but there's usually innocuous apps like weather and games and whatnot. Gas Buddy is a big one. If you use those apps to have location enabled alerts, things like that, that data then gets sold to the geofencing.
And we'll have you on
providers.
to do a really deep dive into geoconquesting, but there is some good news that product and that capability is far less likely to be, at least not compromised to the extent I thought it would be based on Apple's recent move.
Yeah, the providers are a part of industry consortiums around identity.
Yep. All right. So those are the challenges. Let's take solutions kind of one bucket at a time here, Adam. And I think most people understand contextual. Maybe talk to us a little bit about why that one is probably the most popular in terms of what's likely to be uptaken by advertisers.
Yeah, contextual is a very powerful and proven technology. It's been in place for a while. These companies that we see on the slide have been around for a while. And basically, it just during an ad call, their technology can discern what that page is about or what that site is generally about. So is it sports? Is it weather? Is it politics? Is it specific concepts and keywords within those larger groups? So if you as an advertiser set up the concepts and keywords that you want your ad to show against, this technology in a fraction of a second during that ad call can understand what's going on that page, and should your ad be one of the ads within the auction set based on your targeting parameters.
Yep. And you can watch video part 1. We do a deep dive into that. And in fact, New Voodoo has ad tech that allows us to crawl the content of specific videos to make sure they fit our targeting before pre-roll is served in front of them. So I think also clients and prospects for New Voodoo on this call, watching this video, do have a good understanding of first-party data. What that means is essentially curated, stored digital relationships that a business has with its customers, whether that's a stored email address or a browser pixel that's triggered, so they kind of know who's reacted to that. And I think people do understand that certain parts of first-party data acquisition are going to be compromised. But maybe not as many folks understand the idea of first-party publisher and industry solutions. So let's take these one at a time and tell us what we mean by publisher ID as first-party data.
Yeah, so publishers and it doesn't mean necessarily one single website. It can be groups of websites, but they have significant visits and unique visits and per month, and they collect data, either the emails, logins, subscriptions, to kind of know who you are, or at least who this device belongs to, and then from there, either based on your content consumption on the publisher, or they will match users against the device graphs of very popular data providers. They can kind of understand your behaviors online. So then that is all shared with the media buying platforms like Xandr, Trade Desk, MediaMath. So yeah, in a nutshell, that's a publisher ID solution.
And essentially, the industry level ID works similarly. I know we will use email address that have been aggregated and curated by third-party suppliers that give us access to very specific niches. For example, we recently ran a webinar targeting the live event planning industry, people who put on trade shows and conventions. And we wanted to share with them recent research that we'd conducted about people's appetite for returning to normal. And so we relied on industry ID solutions to fulfill a prospecting email campaign. But obviously that's a very specific tactic. It's a much broader opportunity than that. Maybe you could explain a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Beyond ingesting emails and matching them to devices, which is very, very powerful, and things that we do together all the time. There are, broad, that one is more a company specific, but the advertising technology companies in the US have banded together for Unified ID 2.0. That's where they essentially kind of share their device graphs and their corresponding behaviors of the device, and try to fill in the broader user base of the internet so we can all target them. So it's a classic case of frenemies kind of banding together against larger enemies in the walled gardens, because everybody has stake in this. So that's Unified ID 2.0, and the Net ID is the European solution, the equivalent to that.
And speaking of the enemy of my enemy is my friend, browser frameworks, that's the walled garden solution, right? This is the idea of these powerful market forces that aggregate so much consumer data that there is a way for them to actually replace third-party cookie solutions in effect. So maybe talk to us a little bit about the Google Privacy Sandbox project.
Yeah, whereas cookies kind of phone home and or get read as you visit certain sites, your cookies get read, and that information is then stored on the server. Google's solution to this is the Privacy Sandbox, which is just think of it as a little digital locker connected to your browser that keeps your browsing history and your behaviors, and those signals that normally would be picked up by cookies are kind of stored in this Privacy Sandbox digital locker connected to your browser.
And this would explain why I'm suddenly getting a whole bunch of upsells about adding this to as a Chrome browser extension, for example. This is all the way of kind of fueling that Privacy Sandbox.
Yeah. Just by being a Chrome extension, you're a little bit closer to the source, and you've proven to play nice with Chrome. Yep. So that definitely will facilitate some of those things.
So this next one strikes close to home. We knew Vuder spent a few years working in the newspaper business, and appreciate the newspaper, and again, I'm not referring to just the paper itself, but the digital extension of the newspaper, very powerful local market data aggregator. And so this would be our firsthand experience with what we refer to as a curated marketplace. So this is a different way of getting at a targeted universe that really helps big publishers, particularly ones that serve a variety of different content and attract a number of different constituencies.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a way to take things one level up from, let's just say, open exchange buying, but one level below, going, right to the publisher and having some sort of guaranteed buy. It's right in the middle where you get to negotiate and work with the publishers on the types of content and sections of their site, and also, if you so choose, you can leverage their first party data as well, either for a fee, or if you buy enough media from them, they'll throw it in. So you get to kind of choose your content and potentially choose your audience as well.
You explained to me the importance of a media trader like yourself needing to aggregate similar publisher content buckets, because the idea here is not that you're buying access to an audience that you can chase around the internet, right? This is kind of while they're consuming the content. So it really does place pressure on the media buying firm to have enough access to curated marketplaces to make specific industry niches aggregate, so you get a big enough audience to be able to realize, whatever the KPIs that are set out for your ad objective.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really publisher to publisher how much they release to the open exchanges. Especially with things like TV and premium display, the publishers keep, quote unquote, the good stuff within deals or programmatic guaranteed or direct run insertion orders with them. So if you want the best placements, you want the sorts of content that you want, then you really do need to work with publishers, and publishers at scale too.
Yep. And in case you missed it, one word cut out while you're giving the explanation. The most important word was connected TVs, but basically smart TV, connected TV categories. You get preferential access because you've negotiated basically a private marketplace deal. So you have access to this curated marketplace. And I know a very specific example was a use of true optic targeting that gives us the ability to reach people who have watched awards shows or reality shows, or into things like The Bachelor. It's a mostly female 25 to 49 mindset. But because of all of the work you've done with publisher deals, you're able to use that true optic targeting, but get to the head of the line, right? And get access to that content before it's let loose on the exchanges.
Yeah, absolutely. We use that audience, that desired audience, and then couple that with where those folks are most likely to be watching. So very powerful.
So this next one, we've had a lot of success using Facebook's brand lift objective, and I won't get into it in too much detail here, but essentially it's a way of taking a smaller sample of people that have been exposed to an ad and compared to people who haven't been exposed to that advertiser. Key differences and similarities are mapped out, and then that is extrapolated to the rest of the consumer base with about an 80% confidence rate. So it's a way of using big data and machine learning to essentially leverage these data relationships in a much more expanded way. And I think of all of these, Adam, this one strikes me as the one that opens up the world to marketers instead of closing it down, because instead of competing with others who've only clicked on ads, we use this data science and have the ability of incorporating people who would never click on an ad into the targeting, which is kind of makes this one the expansive one. But maybe a little bit more about it. My brand lift objective is one example in what is a much broader category.
Yeah, absolutely. For overcoming the challenges, in relation to data science and data-driven solutions, the way the internet works isn't changing. It's just Google and Apple are turning some things off, and that's it. We're all going to visit our websites that we were before and after these artificial kind of milestones have been put in place. The user behavior is going to stay the same. The framework of the internet is going to stay the same, meaning, when you make your web request, your HTTP request, your IP address and your browser and this and that are still passed, to the web server. So instead of just kind of relying on cookies as a shortcut to user behavior, these web calls are going to be processed real time by algorithms to understand the questions that are at hand. Questions being, well, how many times has someone seen an ad in a period of time? What are some of these users' other behaviors that send things like purchasing signals out there? And then also, other measurements, along the way. So, the internet still is fueled by browser calls, and now those browser calls are going to be analyzed by smart algorithms to understand the answers to these questions.
Yep, and then apply them to a broader universe using statistical probability
Absolutely.
analysis. So that's an awful lot to keep track of. And I know you're going to roll up and summarize sort of the things that any business owner, whether they're going to attempt to, keep control of their own marketing and do it in-house, or rely on firms like us that have the expertise, there's still a checklist to follow no matter what. So Adam, you put together a very high level series of practices to focus on right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Number one, start testing. If you're not doing contextual or not tried multiple contextual vendors, now's the time to try to do wide and narrow targeting through contextual. Now is the time to start onboarding your email lists or acquiring email lists and onboard. No time like the present to work with more publishers as well. Those things take time. It's a very manual process, even though the buying is done very in an automated fashion. You still have emails and negotiations and things to work out. Prepping your first party data, making sure you've got clean email lists, that things are in order with your CRMs if you choose to open up your CRM to these platforms and share data that way. And the last one is just, making sure you're supporting the open internet with the appropriate amount of budget in your media plans, going outside of walled gardens like Facebook, Twitter, and Google.
There is one, I think, hidden advantage to working with a firm such as ours, or perhaps there's one, that you have more experience and have built up more trust with over the years, that I think gets lost, because most people understand that, they have to pay the hard cost of the advertising and then mark up to compensate third-party firms such as ourselves for their time and expertise. But that's literally time and expertise that goes into planning the targeting for the specific advertiser and understanding the placements and the audience that are going to work best, and then obviously the time to implement and optimize the system. But one of the things that you don't have to pay for is people like Adam spending half of his workday on the phone with other publishers to cut private marketplace deals to give New Voodoo advertisers kind of that front of the line pass. You're not having to pay Adam to keep up with the latest news about capabilities or regulations. In the past month, it's taken both of us, I would say, at least a full work week of study to fully appreciate and understand the impact of these types of changes that we'll have on ad buys. And that's our job. But when you are hiring an external partner like us, that's a hidden benefit that you're not paying for. And I call it free tuition. And I think the important takeaway, Adam, is that it's no matter what, replacing cookies and browser device IDs is not going to be a one-size-fits-all solution.
Yeah, absolutely. The first two on the left, the key strategies, the use of contextual and the use of first party data, that's entirely on the advertiser on implementing those sorts of things. And kind of the rest of the the points are generally on the platforms themselves, but some combination of these tactics are going to be needed to overcome the challenges of losing cookies and opt in mobile tracking.
But now you've armed with a series of questions to ask your partner, and you're better prepared for the future ahead just from having watched this video. Mobile IDs and cookies are not going to be the answer long term. They'll be less reliable. You will need to learn and understand new targeting strategies. We've mentioned them here. We're going to do deep dives into our favorite. We did that with the semantic targeting that uses video content. We're able to kind of crawl video content before we serve a pre-roll. Adam, we're definitely going to have you back because I think the world of location-based targeting is going to be really important, especially as we open up, and we want to make sure our clients really do appreciate geo-conquesting and geofencing. So we'd like to have you back. This is Adam's checklist, and we're New Voodoo Media Services. We are a direct marketing firm that maintains an internal media trading team, experts in direct mail, experts in digital, and then we bring in partners like Adam who have very specific expertise. And basically, Adam, you're kind of our vice president in charge of mobile location-based strategies, our connected TV strategies, our programmatic media buying, and our internal team works heavily on the walled garden ecosystem. And really, both are important. Finally, what New Voodoo brings to the table is research that's updated constantly, that gives us the ability to optimize the path of marketing. Right? We want to find your consumers where they're using channels the most, because despite everything that's shifted and changed, there is some truisms that just don't. Frequency matters. Understanding the whole idea of the sales funnel, where you start with brand building, image building, trust building, and you end at the cash register, and you follow a bunch of intermediate steps in the way. None of that is likely to change. What is likely to change is going to be technology and capabilities. And Adam, I don't know what percentage of your workday is spent on, you have to implement your projects. So percentage is probably an unfair word. It's probably how many extra hours are you having to spend to keep track of stuff each week, to keep your expertise edge over all the other trading firms that are out there.
Yeah, several hours per day.
It's a lot. And we'd love to work with you. And Adam is available, as am I, to consult, particularly if you have a more challenging set of targeting objectives that won't rely on a simple age, gender, and geo. And we'd love to have that conversation with you. In fact, one email gets you access to the entire New Voodoo executive team, whether it's a research need, a marketing need, a digital capability need, or some combination of thereof. We do all of that. Plus, we have our own live conferencing and external live event, a virtual live event planning technology. All of that is available to you with one email. So Adam, thank you very much for your time today. It was very insightful, useful, and I'm sure we're going to be counting on you to help us with client solutions for years ahead.
Appreciate you having me, Mike.
And we appreciate you watching. I'm Mike O'Connor with New Voodoo Media Services, and it's been a pleasure. Thanks.